begin. So this is the second summer conference of this new network that actually started last year. We had started it with the idea of doing a in-person workshop for 25 people, and then bam, the pandemic hit. And when I say we, I mean Kristan Blagoev, who Kristan, maybe you can wave in the grid of videos there, from the National Science Foundation, who is helping fund this effort, and then Isa Gallegos. In my case, she's in the top left corner, and myself. And then we were later joined by Sarah Bradley, who, is absolutely instrumental to all that is happening. So I even though we're just beginning here, I want to have a big round of applause for Sarah for all the work she does to keep the network running. And our videographer, Kelly Whittycomb, who has been supporting all of our talks on Sunday. If you're new to the network, I hope you will make a habit of joining. We typically have monthly talks that are well attended. They're now pre-recorded and made available on perusal, so that we don't just all use the time that we get together to passively listen, but can use that time for an active discussion. More about that later. So the program is structured as follows. In the next 3 days, so today, tomorrow, and on Thursday, we'll have a keynote. And after the keynote, we will have a panel from 2 to 3 East Coast time, translated to wherever you are on the globe. Maybe, Sarah, you can put the program in the chat, because it's scrolled off to the top so that people can see what the time zones are for the different parts of the program. And the panel essentially matches the theme of the day. Today's theme is why physics. One of the things that we heard loud and clear when we had the open space discussions last year was that a lot of people feel the need to find better ways of justifying the study of physics to high school students and their parents and administrators. So we decided to devote this live session as well as the panel to discussing this motivating of the study of physics. And then tomorrow will be a theme related to inclusivity. Everyone is a physicist. And finally, on the last day, we'll have the theme being improving the pedagogical approach in the teaching of physics. Now, the panel will not be a discussion of the talks. It will be the people who gave talks helping lead a moderated panel discussion with the audience and with participation from the audience on that subject. So please do watch the talks separately. You can pre-watch them before the panel or after. It doesn't really matter, but before is probably better, because you get to know the speaker on perusal and engaged in a discussion there. I've already seen a number of unanswered questions, so it would be good for people to come back and see if they can answer some of the questions that the other people had. Before I introduce the speaker for today, I hope that you will continue to make active use of the chat. We will postpone the discussion till the end of the talk. But if you want to get in line to ask questions, because we won't have that much time to ask questions, raise your hand. The earlier you raise a hand, the earlier you're in line to ask a question when we start a discussion. In case you don't know how to raise your hand, somewhere there at the bottom is a reactions button. Click on that reactions button, and then at the bottom of the little window that pops up is a raise hand button. For example, now I'm raising my hand, as you can see in the top left corner there. So I'll remind you of that as we go on. And also during the talk, ask questions in the chat. We might be able to answer each other's questions. And who knows, maybe our speaker is an incredible multitasker who is able to both speak and type at the same time. So our speaker today is Crystal Bailey. Crystal, thank you so much for joining us today. Crystal is the head of career programs at the American Physical Society in College Park, Maryland, the APS. And Crystal works on a topic that is really directly related to today's subject, promoting physics and physics career information to high school students, to undergraduates, to graduate students, and even physics professionals. So she has been very active at APS annual division meetings. I hear you're going to be at the AAPT meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a lot going on at AAPT. We will definitely be there.
Good. Well, I'm that. You know, way back when I started my career at Harvard, the APS and the AAPT had a joint membership program. We have to work on getting that back again.
Yes.
I've always thought, why do we have two professional societies? The ACS, for example, and the AAS, the American Astronomical Society, have just one society, not two. But after all, we're all physicists. We're all one community. Anyway, maybe something you and I can talk about separately. So before starting her work at the APS, Crystal did research in nuclear physics at Indiana University, Bloomington, where she obtained her PhD. Crystal, we're absolutely delighted to have you here. I'm handing it over to you.
Okay, well, yes, thank you so much, Eric. And I also want to shout out that before I went to grad school at Indiana University, I worked with Gay Stuart at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. So she's the reason
Good.
I am a physicist. She kind of poached me from engineering, but no, I mean, she's fantastic and she's the reason I'm a physicist. And I'm so grateful for her. She's an amazing educator. So I just wanted to mention that.
You know that Gay and I have worked together for a long time.
I know, I do.
Like 20, 25 years or so. So that's just absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hello, hi there. Yeah, so my name is Crystal Bailey, and I'm head of career programs at the American Physical Society. And I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk with you all today. In my work as head of career programs, I'm often working on helping educators better prepare students for future careers, and also helping the students themselves, be empowered to look for the careers that they want, connect with the opportunities that they're passionate about. So today, I know I'm in the why physics sort of section of this conference, and I am going to talk a little bit about why physics is a great major, why it's a wonderful thing for students to study, and a little bit about the skills that physics graduates have that really make them very appealing to employers. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we can empower our physics students to use the physics that they learn to change the world and make it a better place. So with that, I'll just go ahead and dive in, if I can get my thing to work. All right. So, common vision of physicists. And I think I first came across this problem when I started working for the APS back in 2009 and was trying to find clip art. And that really said physicist, and I Googled physicist clip art. And, I'd get Einstein, I'd get a lot of caricatures of Einstein. I'd get, the atom, maybe someone in a lab coat. And, that was really kind of amazing to me that it was so hard to find kind of a human vision in the eyes of the general public of what a physicist is that wasn't, Einstein. And in fact, if you Google it, who is a physicist, you get images like this, right? There's Einstein there, the 10 greatest physicists. And, you look at that and you begin to realize that there are some commonalities, and that someone who might look that up, a young person maybe, or a parent, would get an impression, which is that physicists, or at least great physicists, are men. Pretty much everybody in that list is a man. That they're academic, that they, to be a physicist is to relentlessly pursue knowledge, the truth about the universe for the sake of itself, and that's the only real, true, noble pursuit of a physicist is knowledge, and that they're elite. All of these folks in this poster here, working at the best universities, the highest profile careers, publishing papers, very, very well known, kind of in that elite academic space. So that's often what people kind of think of when they think of a physicist. Well, what's wrong with this picture? Well, so first of all, it is not accurate. There are lots of women and people from all kinds of backgrounds who are doing physics, that's for sure, though physics does still suffer from a pretty profound lack of diversity. But the reason that this idealization of this picture of a physicist is wrong is that we should be striving for diversity. Not only is it the right thing to do, it also strengthens the science that we do. It allows for participation for a lot more minds, bright young minds who are interested in making new discoveries and contributing. So we should be striving for diversity for the benefit of students who are coming into our programs. We want to make them feel welcome. We want to make them feel like this is for them. It's better for physics departments, and it's also better for the discipline, as for reasons that I just described. There is low participation of women and underrepresented groups in physics. And the demographics of those who are actually coming into college, who are deciding to go and get a college degree, is changing. A lot of the folks who are coming are, in many cases, first generation college students. And that's not to say that these students aren't also deeply motivated by the wonder of discovery of new knowledge of the universe. That is absolutely a huge motivator for students coming in. But for them and for those who advise them, it may also be a priority that the major that they choose lead to stable, well-paying careers, and that those careers allow them to make a positive impact in their communities, in the world. Having a good positive social impact is becoming increasingly important for today's students. So the APS Pipeline project, which I'm going to talk to you about later, we had a research component, and basically what they found, they surveyed 178 undergraduate physics majors. And of all those majors, over here we have a graphic of why social impact is important in physics. But what's key is that 92% of all the students total said that social impact of physics was very or somewhat important. But 100% of all the female students, the women, all of them agreed that social impact with respect to physics was very or somewhat important. So you can clearly see that students they have an awareness of the importance of social impact, and they see a connection between physics and social impact. The other reason that initial picture I showed you is wrong is, in fact, the vast majority of physics graduates do not become academics. If we design our approach to teaching physics to students with an outcome in mind that they will become academics, it actually leaves students unprepared in very important ways for the career paths they will actually have, mostly in industry. So what I've showed you there, what I have there is a graph of initial employment of physics degree holders. And this is all taken from the AIP Statistical Research Center. And the key thing you need to understand about this graph is that it intentionally excludes positions that have a built-in expiration date. It excludes the, by definition, temporary positions. What I mean by that are postdoc positions and assistant lecturer positions, 2 to 3 years, not designed to go beyond that, not in and of themselves leading to more permanent employment. So if you actually take those off the table and only include jobs that aren't temporary, have solid benefits, in my humble opinion, the real jobs, if you look at those, you can clearly see that the private sector is the largest employment base, permanent employment base for physicists at bachelor's, master's, or PhD degree levels. So really quickly, I'll tell you a little bit about these folks who are working in these different areas. In the private sector, the bachelor's degree recipients in the private sector are largely, they're not going to have the word physicist in their job title. It might be engineer, it might be analyst. The physics bachelors working in those positions are often on interdisciplinary teams with other STEM graduates, and they're working together to solve a particular problem, work out a part of a process, develop a certain, run a certain piece of equipment, things like that. But the physics bachelors who are on those teams, even though they don't have physics in their title, they still bring to the table very special qualities that I will get into later, which are the reason why the employer hired them specifically to be on these interdisciplinary teams. The master's degree recipients in the private sector, maybe they would be managing that group of bachelor's recipients. Maybe they'd be helping to troubleshoot more difficult problems. Maybe they would be doing some research, maybe marshaling funds or doing reporting, things like that. And then the PhDs who are working in the private sector, that's the situation where you really get into the potential for real, even potentially publishable scientific research, research and development, product development, really using that physics subfield knowledge and a very finely honed ability to problem solve and do experimental research that's going to serve those PhDs in those private sector environments. In the academic sector, shown here in this graph, the bachelor's recipients who are in the kind of academic sector, they're going to largely be, either teachers, you've got the high school kind of off by itself, but the bachelors who are in the colleges and universities, they're going to be folks who are maybe working temporarily. Maybe they're helping over the summer, or they're taking a gap year and they're working and they're getting an hourly wage with the university, but these are certainly not people who are academic professors, the bachelors who are in the academic sector. Maybe they're between getting their bachelor and going to grad school or something else. The master's degree recipients that were working in the academic sector, in the colleges or the universities, like especially the PhD serving universities, they might be actually running the lab. They might be making sure that the lab write-ups make sense, that everything's well stocked, and helping kind of keep the labs going in these kinds of settings. They also might be teaching in a 2-year or community college. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind if a student is interested in teaching, but they don't want to take on the burden of the, tenure track and publishing and service and all the kind of wonderful things that go along with the 4-year academic, regular academic job, then teaching in a community college will be a really great choice for them. They get to teach and really kind of make an impact. A lot of those are represented here in this graph. And of course, the PhDs working in the academic sector, we're talking about your tenure track, permanent sort of professors. National lab and government. So, believe it or not, there are definitely permanent careers for bachelor's recipients in national labs. It's not a huge number, but it is a very rewarding career path to be doing a lot of technical work, assisting users, engaging in research. It's a great job. Those are out there. A master's degree recipient in a national lab sort of environment, maybe they're managing that instrument team. Maybe they're managing resources, they're working with users. There are a lot of career paths for master's recipients working on these teams with users in national labs. And then at the PhD level in this particular graph, again, these are only the permanent jobs. This does not include postdocs. This does not include, assistant lecturer kind of positions. These are the permanent jobs. The PhDs in the national labs, if you get a permanent staff job at a national lab at a PhD level, you are doing, it's a great job if you like research. You're managing large operations. You're working with lots of different users. You get to publish papers. You get to really kind of continue to participate in that search for knowledge, new knowledge. And I will also tell you that the PhD permanent positions in national labs pay extremely well. So do the PhD jobs in the private sector. They both pay exceedingly well. The only difference is there's about 10 times more of those PhD private sector positions than there are the national lab ones. So great, very rewarding, but your odds of getting them are probably smaller because there are fewer of them than the private sector PhD jobs. So what I'm trying to do here is give you a sense that, a sense of where these people go and what they do when they get their degrees. And also, again, confronting that first image of physicists. We need to be promoting careers within physics that provide stable income, potential for social impact. It's critical for supporting diverse STEM programs and healthy physics departments and all of that. Okay, now getting into why these employers are seeking physicists to work on these teams. Employers in STEM fields value physics graduates in their companies as members of interdisciplinary teams, as I've already said. Why is that? Well, the standard physics curriculum, even as we teach it today, does create familiarity with a lot of technologies and skills that are commonly used in the STEM workforce. So for example, programming languages. Many people, whether you're bachelor, master, or PhD, if you've done any kind of research, and that actually might even go for theory as well, theory or experimental, you will have learned some programming languages, and that is incredibly useful in every context. Maybe students who've done research have done some circuit design, diagnostics. Maybe they've looked, used oscilloscopes. Maybe they've soldered. Maybe they've looked at schematics, things like that. That's also really valuable skill set. Mathematical proficiency. Most physics graduates, that's the hallmark of what we learn. Again, even at the bachelor level, differential equations, linear algebra, and being able to wield that machinery to solve any variety of problems, being able to use the math out of a specific context is tremendously useful. And that is something that physics students, will have learned. And fabrication. Maybe physics graduates have made something. Maybe they got the drill press out or used the bandsaw or used a lathe or things like that. Those are all really valuable skills. We also know that these employers value physics graduates in these companies from the language of job descriptions. So if you, for example, look at the APS job board, and this is a job board that employers will have posted on expressly with the intent of reaching physics graduates. The common job titles across these recruitments often aren't necessarily, as I said before, physicist, but they'll say analyst, engineer, developer. They want to keep it general because they're actually trying to recruit a lot of different STEM fields. But the common skills used in these recruitments are things like perform testing and analysis, develop, design, implement, run queries, run reports. So when I'm normally giving this talk to a room full of undergraduate students, for example, I'll ask them if they've done any of these things. And of course, most of them raise their hand. Of course, they recognize that they have these skills. And this is the most recent data I was able to dig up. There may be a more recent report than this from AIP. But if you look at the knowledge and skills used by these new physics bachelors in the private sector, and it kind of contrasts those with kind of engineering title versus computer science in their title. But clearly, teamwork is across the board really important. This is the thing you hear most from employers. Being able to work on a team, your EQ, your emotional intelligence is far more valuable to an employer, knowing that you can work with others well, than any kind of IQ or specific subfield knowledge that a student brings to the table. Because they feel like they can train for knowledge. They can't train for attitude. So anyway, that's kind of an aside. But you clearly see that solving technical problems is really important to these students in these jobs. Also, programming, really important, especially in the computer science area. simulation, modeling, and advanced math. So you can kind of see from this graph what are some of the really key skills that are used by these graduates. And they're the same skills that, maybe the same skills that some engineering or chemistry or other STEM graduates have as well. We also know that they're valuable because they tell us. And so in April 2013, there was a gathering. There are a lot of photonics companies that have kind of sprung up in the Denver Boulder area. And in 2013, there was a meeting held of different CEOs of these companies to try to understand what is it specifically that physics majors bring to the table in these kinds of environments. And I took down this quote from Nate Seidel, who is the founder of SparkFun, and he himself is an engineering background. But what he said was, engineering is about putting the period on the sentence. The engineer might write the code, but the physicist understands what it has to do with the larger context. Together, they are very effective. And to me, that last little bit, together, they are very effective, is really, really powerful. Because, you know, an engineer might not be able to derive from first principles the solution to a particular problem. And a physicist might be able to do that. But even though the physicist might be able to build something that works, it doesn't fit within a certain space and operate within a certain tolerance and maybe even cost less than $1 to produce, right? They're not trained for that. Physicists are not trained for that, and engineers are not trained for what the physicists do. And that's fine. You know, I think that's the key point to emphasize here is that that's why they're often used together in teams. Each one sort of brings a special sort of expertise to the table. Also, Kettering University has a applied physics and engineering physics program. And they're ABET accredited. And I think they're one of the few physics programs in the country that does have the ABET accreditation. And one thing that's really special about Kettering is they not only encourage or allow their students to take their summer break to work in an internship in companies, they require it. So they have all these engineering and applied physics graduates that are going into companies to work with these employers. And they did a survey of these employers that worked with these physics majors. 80% of the surveyed employers agreed the physics majors could easily grasp new knowledge and concepts. That's great. They were able to identify, formulate, and solve problems. They were able to successfully analyze and interpret data. These are all things that we would hope that our physics students are able to do. Competently use computer applications and databases, were able to use current techniques and tools for technical practices, and they could engage in continued learning and problem solving. And this is what I keep trying to kind of get to. This is the thing that makes physics students special, is that when they're faced with a situation where they don't know the next step and they don't know the answer, they have the confidence that they can teach themselves what they need to know in order to take that next step. They're not going to throw up their hands and say, I wasn't trained for this. I don't know what this is. They are compelled almost to, they see it as a challenge, and they understand the math and they understand how to use these more broad principles. And they're going to go and they're going to look in chapter 3 when they learned about work and energy, and they're going to go back and review their E&M textbook, and they're going to try to come up with a solution to the problem. And that is really special. That's something that employers really value in physics students. But when we talk about how these physics graduates are bringing to the table skills, technical and scientific skills that really make them either equally valuable to employers as other STEM graduates, or maybe even more so in certain ways, you know, they have certain strengths that set them apart. It overlooks something that I feel is very strongly tied to that last point I made, which is that when you look at a lot of the really important game-changing technologies that have been created, transistors, fiber optics, lasers, all that kind of stuff, they often came from fundamental physics research and came from the minds of physicists. And so I'm here to say that physics students, in that sort of fearlessness or confidence that they have to come up with new unusual solutions to problems, they can take that deep scientific knowledge, technical skill, mathematical ability, and translate that to discovering new solutions to challenging problems that are facing us. So we are missing an opportunity by not using this to inspire our physics students, inspire students to major in physics, to study physics, because not only does it prepare them for their future career, it also gives them this amazing sort of toolkit that they can use to really, innovate and solve big problems. So if we broaden our view of the role which physicists play in the workforce and world, certainly, it'll help benefit humanity to have more people thinking about these problems. It will certainly also create better career outcomes for students. They major in physics. They have this whole world of great opportunity there for them. And as I said before, it also can help bring more diversity and inclusiveness into physics by telling students who are fascinated by the universe and want to know how it works, and also want to do something that really has a positive impact in the world, that physics can allow them to do that, and that they're welcome in physics with those aspirations. So I'm going to just talk about a couple of profiles of some folks, just as kind of like a counterpoint to that first slide I showed. So this is Zara Husseini, who was originally an engineering student, but she changed majors to physics because she did find physics fascinating. I think her exact quote in her profile that's on our website is she loved to study physics. She loved this knowledge of the world that physics provided. But I think the way she put it was, I wanted to know physics, but I didn't want to do physics. Meaning it wasn't appealing to her, the track that she saw as the standard career path of going to physics grad school and getting her PhD and going into an academic, that wasn't what she was really interested in. So her advisor helped her find a position at NIST. And there she did a lot of coding, she did a lot of programming, and really discovered that that was something that she really enjoyed, that it was just really near and dear to her heart. So after, kind of coming to that decision that she wasn't going to go to grad school in physics, she ended up getting a job at Google. And today she's a site reliability engineer and focuses on the reliability and maintainability of large systems, such as Google Search. So Zara is behind what makes Google Search tick. So it's a really great example of somebody who was drawn to physics because she loved to understand more about the universe, but then also found a really rewarding career path from some of the skills that she gained while doing physics research. Also, Meghan Anzeic, who is head of data and analytics at Spencer Stuart. So Meghan was initially a physics minor, but she got hooked on experimental science during a summer internship. She just found that she absolutely loved doing physics research. Because of this, she pursued grad school. Not because she wanted this sort of academic career path, but because she loved research so much, and she felt like, well, if I want to keep doing research, I should go on to graduate school. Incidentally, that's what motivated me to go to grad school. So that's why she went and got her PhD in high energy physics. Afterwards, she found that research experience in high energy physics prepared her for a career in predictive modeling in the insurance industry. And you see this a lot. People with a high energy background, they're so used to using models to kind of explain the behavior of large amounts of data, looking for patterns in a large amount of data. Turns out that's the exact skill set that helped her transition into the insurance industry. After doing that for many years, she got more interested in the business side of things. And she also does a lot of career related talks and things like that. So her work now, after going through different positions and companies, she tried a lot of different things. Now she uses her skill set to build and implement strategies to advance her firm's data and analytics capabilities. And her firm works on executive recruiting and things like that. So it's more people focused. So she was able to take this skill set and just go a lot of different directions with it. It's very versatile and explore a lot of different things. So again, and I think this will definitely tie into some of the other sessions that are happening today, but I just wanted to say this. I personally think that what we really need to do is evolve the discipline by broadening our vision of who does physics, what physics is, and why we do physics. Who is a physicist? We need to take into account students' career goals and aspirations, including whatever degree path that they want to take. And too often in physics departments, whether overtly or sort of covertly or maybe even unconsciously, a lot of folks will other students who are not interested in going what they construe to be the traditional path, students who actually want to go graduate with a bachelor's, master's, PhD, and do something besides that with them. They're often othered, and they're often given the message that those career goals are somehow lesser. We need to take into account students' values and the stakeholders who are influencing their decisions. All of that is important in these students' choices. We need to broaden what content is taught to physicists. So yes, scientific knowledge, problem solving, analytical skills, those are all really important. We also need to be teaching them computational skills, lab skills, communication skills, and also encouraging that habit of innovation that they have, really using it to inspire them to use what they're learning to make a big difference in the world. And we also need to think about why we do physics. Yes, we need to emphasize the potential for physics graduates to contribute to solving human challenges. We can continue to promote a sense of wonder at discovering new knowledge, but we also need to examine that there is a privilege inherent in centering careers focused solely on discovery of new knowledge, and thinking less of those that don't. And if we shift from a more technocentric to human-centric design, it will allow for a more diverse community of students to recognize the value of studying physics. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears again and talk to you a little bit about work that's been done along these lines. The APS PIPELINE Network was a collaborative project funded by the NSF, launched in 2016 to promote what we called at the time physics, innovation, and entrepreneurship education. And we realize now in retrospect that it was kind of an unfortunate branding choice, because most educators, when they see the word entrepreneurship, they think startups, they think business school, they think not for me, not my problem. I'm not going to teach these kids how to, angel investment and whatnot. I mean, I think a lot of folks see that E word and they get completely freaked out. That's unfortunate, because in fact, what we were trying to develop is a physics curriculum which integrates technical skills and problem solving, encourages teamwork and open-ended thinking, so important in these real world situations where students are going to be applying their skills, teaching communication that's relevant in a lot of different contexts and stakeholders, contextualizing physics in real world situations, helping students see how this actually can be applied to a problem that they want to solve, demonstrating critical professional and life skills such as independent learning, working collaboratively, and emphasizing the potential for social impact. So this is what we were trying to deliver under the heading of physics, innovation, and entrepreneurship education, and I think a lot of people didn't really get that. But I'll give you some examples of some of the curricula that were developed. This is one of my favorite ones from the whole sort of canon of things that were developed. I love this because it is a first-year introductory course, kinematics, very basic, distance, velocity, distance over time, acceleration, very, very basic kind of physics. But the whole module is centered around Elon Musk's Hyperloop concept. In case you're not familiar, it's basically a big evacuated tube that has a train that goes really, really, really fast to help them cover large distances in a very short period of time. So this module is great because it kind of builds. At first, the students sort of calculate, just like if you started in DC and went to Boston at a certain speed, how long would it take? And it piques their interest because they really like the idea of getting there like this huge distance in like a couple hours or 3 hours. And then it starts to build more complexity. So what if you had stops along the way? And then all of a sudden, you're incorporating acceleration and things like that. But what I particularly like about this module is that it builds in a lot of open-ended questions. So for example, the acceleration question, it doesn't say, what if it has to slow down in 4 places and give them the deceleration or acceleration? It asks, at a comfortable acceleration, how much more time would it add to stop 4 times? So obviously this unnerves students in the beginning because they have to actually kind of think about, well, how would I estimate an comfortable acceleration? And they start to converge on, well, like, what if I was in a car or like an airplane? They start thinking about G's. But it's a lot of people, when they see the stuff that we developed under Pipeline, they think, oh, that's engineering. No, having students get comfortable making assumptions, creative assumptions, and then defending them, that is absolutely physics. That is at the core of what physics is, in my opinion. So I think it's a really great module that was developed at Loyola University. We also have a module that was developed that a lot of times there's a new model for developing new products. It's an agile methodology that's like, instead of having a big plan that you execute, it's very iterative and it goes really quickly, and you're always changing things about your product. Very, very common. All kinds of companies use it. And so at William & Mary, Walter DeConnick developed this approach to this that's based on a CubeSat mission. And there are scrums. You have Kanban boards, you get stand-up meetings. It's a great way for students to kind of learn what that methodology looks like. And team-based projects, how it kind of works. And they also get to use their physics knowledge. They're thinking about orbital paths and things like that. So it's a really fun activity to get them familiar with that mindset or that methodology. We also have pop-up courses. At the Rochester Institute of Technology, Linda Barton developed a couple of activities. First, some pop-up courses. And pop-up courses are great because they're just like a 2 or 3 hour session. They can take place anytime, anywhere. You just need a room. They were extremely popular with the students. When she opened the sign up, I think she sent the email out like in the afternoon, and all the spots were filled by that night. Students just loved it. It was super fun. But it's a great opportunity to teach them these important skills like Arduino programming, electronic skills. She also developed a really cool industrial R&D activity. So when many students hear the word modern physics, they're actually talking about physics that's 100 years old plus. So this activity takes technologies that are truly modern, Gorilla Glass, blue lasers. There are a whole list of different technologies that are used in devices that we use every day. And it's really special because this activity, the students don't necessarily give a presentation on the physics behind that technology. They give a presentation on how that technology was used by a company. What is the origin story of that company? They research kind of how it came to be. And it's a great way for students to learn a little bit more about how that process unfolds of a company that develops around a certain technology. There's also a really great communication capstone course that was developed at George Washington University. It's a capstone course that was tied to a senior research project, but it has a lot of really great activities in there that you might find useful. Many of these approaches could be adapted to high school physics projects. That's why I'm bringing this to you today. And again, I think a lot of times folks get in this mindset that it's a zero-sum game. Like, well, what physics don't I teach to teach this business stuff? I hope that what we've developed under the Pipeline grant helps people understand you can integrate this. You can teach both. It's just a way of kind of shifting the basis vectors, if you will. There are ways you can integrate it into the way that you're teaching physics already. It really needs to be that integrated approach, not this, oh gosh, we have to teach this other stuff now, or else you guys aren't going to have, the right preparation for careers. It doesn't have to be that way. So where you can learn more, the Pipeline Project just came out with our EPIC report. If you go to that website, so there's a paper copy that you can order. We're happy to ship paper copies to you. We sent them out to a lot of different folks already. If you want to order them, go to that website. But the website itself is kind of a website version of the report. So you can read the whole thing on the website. If you go to the Pi library, which is in the upper right-hand corner on the website, you can access all of these approaches. You straight to the PDF, you can kind of see, what's there. We also in this report hope to build a case for why supporting these approaches are really important. All of the arguments I gave at the beginning, they're all kind of in this report. And we also provide advice for funding agencies, university leadership, and professional societies on how they can really support faculty who are trying to develop these approaches. It is a very small kind of community that's working on this, but a lot of people are interested in doing it. So I really hope to kind of foster a community of practice around this and get people sharing their ideas. Real quick before I wrap up, I also want to just mention APS is partnering with the Q12 Partnership for Quantum Workforce Development. If you want to know about an area where there's tremendous need for workforce development, it is in quantum information science. The Quantum Economic Development Consortium that was created a couple years ago recognizes that in order to fill the pipeline, this immense pipeline that we anticipate for these careers in quantum information science, we need to start doing outreach at the middle school and high school level. So getting teachers used to teaching some quantum information science content and also exciting middle and high school students about careers in quantum information science. To this end, we are planning a really fun event in October, Quantum Crossing. It's going to be held in GatherTown, which is kind of a fun virtual environment. And we're basically going to be building virtual lab tours for lots of different quantum companies for students to attend and kind of learn about those career paths. And so we want to get as many high school and middle school students and teachers involved. Be watching the Q12 Education website, q12education.org, for more information when we are ready to kind of roll out that Quantum Crossing information. And we are also planning a quantum town hall for teachers that will be at the AAPT summer meeting. And it's a way for teachers to learn about benefits of introducing quantum information science to students and also giving us feedback about what is needed to succeed in bringing QIS to their students. So there at the bottom is the AAPT conference information. Check that out. That'll show you when you can go to the town hall when that information is available. Okay, so to wrap up, why physics, which is actually the kind of this session is all about why physics. Well, one reason why is that physics opens the door to a greater understanding of how the universe works, which is so inspiring. I think we can all relate to that sense of wonder. Physics also provides valuable scientific, technical, and problem-solving skills that are critically valuable to future employers of students. If we want to prepare our students for great, rewarding careers in science, a physics degree is a great way to do that. There's incredible, support there that students can have for those careers. And physicists have the tools to create novel, game-changing solutions to human problems. We should be inspiring our students as we teach them physics to take their knowledge and use it to create really impactful solutions to problems facing humanity. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you so much, Crystal. That was not only for making such a great case for physics, but also for sharing those resources. And if you're in the audience and you wonder, where can I find all of that? The link is in the chat. I already clicked on it and immediately started forwarding it to somebody else saying, hey, this is great. We should check this out. So this is the hallmark of a great talk, where you have people acting on what the speaker said. So before I launch into the many questions I have, I want to be sure I give the audience a chance to ask. I've already had too much of the floor. So if you have a question for Crystal, since we won't have that, we're going to run a little bit over, but we can't run too much over. Raise your hand, not your physical hand, but your electronic hand, by clicking on the on the reactions button, which should be somewhere there at the bottom, and then on the raise hand question. So I would like to kick off with, actually, I have a lot of thoughts floating through my mind right now, which is great, and I wish we had another 2 hours to chat here. The first one is really that most, I mean, you alluded a lot to employment in industry, to engineering, physics. I mean, most societal problems or technological problems that we're trying to solve are really not limited to a single discipline, and they really transcend disciplines. And what I found, I had seen this a while back, and then it came as a shock, that AIP survey that you briefly shared. Is sort of a case in point. I mean, physics knowledge was number 10 or so on the list. In fact, all the other things had nothing to do with physics, and math came even lower. So maybe that the teaching, and this is probably too big a problem to tackle for us here, but maybe that sort of boxing up the disciplines into these silos that don't communicate with each other is just the wrong premise for education, period. And we should really think much more on developing the type of skills you had on that on that list that physics major said they were using, and let them pull in the disciplinary knowledge they need to solve whatever problem they need to solve. Who are we to know what that content is going to be? I would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yes, well, I mean, I agree completely with you, and you can hear me, right? Okay. Yeah, I agree completely with you. And as a matter of fact, we are starting to see that happening. And it is. So first of all, you see more and more students pursuing dual majors, mixing and matching what they get as their degree, because they see that, they clearly see that the skills that they need for the career paths that they want are kind of laying across many different disciplinary boundaries. And, I think it's smart to recognize that is what's going on. And at the same time, I feel like, this is partly behind what a lot of physics departments are facing in closing down the physics department, not having them be a separate standalone thing. So I think there's also an argument to be made. There's this parable that I remember hearing about a long time ago about people are in a dark room and one person reaches out and they feel something and they think it's a lion. And then another reaches out and they think it's a snake, and another reaches out and they think it's a tree trunk. And when the light is turned on, it's actually an elephant, and everybody's just kind of feeling a different part of the elephant. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on with disciplines. The kinds of ways that students are taught to think about problems. And again, I think that really not being afraid of math, like believing they can wield this machinery to solve any problem, that's very unique to physics. Like that's a way that we teach students that I think is worthy of preserving. So does that mean, is that what identifies the discipline? Maybe it is. They all have all these different disciplines have their different approaches. And because the students are in these different disciplines are taught this diversity of approaches and ways of thinking about problems, that's why they're so effective together as teams. But I think, so just to answer your question, I think what's critical, rather than sort of dissolving disciplines, we should be actively encouraging collaborations across disciplinary boundaries. And this is a big piece of advice I give physics professors. I say, leave your building, walk over to engineering, walk over to math, walk over to art, walk over to the business school, walk over to these places where people are maybe not in STEM, or maybe they're in the medical area. And get to know those folks, build relationships, encourage your students to have interdisciplinary research projects, because you'll be amazed at how many creative, amazing solutions will come out of those collaborations. And it will also teach those students the value of other disciplines. I feel like that's where physics students often fall short. And I didn't include that slide. We have a real problem with physics students not respecting the value of what other STEM folks are bringing to the table.
Well, you'll be interested in knowing that at MIT, they just started a new program under the sponsorship of the president, Rafael Reich, and also a professor from the Astro-Aero department, who has long been an advocate for change in education. He first founded the CDIU movement at Crowley, and then now has sort of been spearheading this approach called NEAT, New Engineering Education Transformation. And essentially, it does away with the major as defined traditionally. And the argument as follow, right? Any engineering type of problem, from let's say the design of an airplane to something else, is really a multidisciplinary problem. I mean, you have in an airplane, you have chemistry, you have biology, you have psychology, you have physics, you have a lot of disciplines that come in. And therefore that entire approach to study is now focused on problems. The students get to choose the problem, so they make it their own, and they work in teams. And then essentially, rather than telling them, in order to become a physicist or an engineer or this or that, you have to take this course and that course and that course, the students get to choose, oh, I'm working on this project, I need that course. Mm-hmm. And I think that approach, frankly, in the 21st century makes so much more sense. Mm-hmm. Last call for questions. So I have not been looking at the chat these last few minutes. Yes, go ahead, Crystal.
So Eric, I just wanted to address, because there's been a lot of talk in the chat that I do want to address. People raising a really good point that we need to be developing materials that help folks who are teaching in high school who aren't necessarily a physicist. And I think that is that's a great idea. Quickly, I talked about the Q12 partnership. I don't know if you're familiar with APS's Physics Quest kits. A product that we produce that we send to middle schools and high schools, and there is a module being developed for information science, and it is designed it does not assume a background in physics. It's meant to be accessible to teachers from all different kinds of backgrounds. And I think that as part of this Q12 education effort, they're really trying to shape what they build to be accessible to people who aren't, PhD physicists or anything like that. So I think I agree that's a great resource, and we're trying to at least contribute some to that. AAPT is central to that effort as well. They're building a big online repository for those curriculum materials for quantum.
And as past president of the Optical Society, I'd like to add to that the Optical Society has an optics suitcase that was, I think, more aimed at middle school rather than high school. But I really think that some of the experiments are useful at any level, especially to inspire. Which actually brings me to another thought. People are born curious about the world. We keep asking why when we're small, and then somehow we lose that curiosity about the world around us, and then towards high school and college, we're trying to reawaken that curiosity, and then later in life maybe it comes back to some of us. Shouldn't we start way earlier? Should we try to make all of elementary school and middle school look like a kindergarten with people experimenting and be curious about the physical world?
Yes, I agree. And you know what? I agree with that. And I think we should also not limit it to school. Well, and this is just so funny because it puts me, I'm here in Little Rock, and North Little Rock, their downtown area, they have this plaza, and it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. We saw this outdoor display, and they had a red light and a green light and a blue light. And I didn't think of it. And if you are not standing in that plaza, it looks like a plain white light, nothing to see here. And then when you walk into it, it's that famous physics demo, with the colored shadows, because the different lights are mixing and the shadows are blocking out certain lights. And I'm there with my parents and a whole bunch of other people, and we're running around squealing. My parents are in their 70s, and we're running around squealing and acting like children. And all these other people who weren't out there were wondering, what is that? And as everybody came over, everybody was just amazed and stunned at this spectacle, this beautiful thing. So I guess to your point, that reminds me that of course all of us are motivated by wonder at the universe, and there's no one place or age where it's appropriate to kind of inspire people like that.
Right. Thank you so much. I think this was absolutely wonderful. So on behalf of all of us, thank you so much. You told me at the beginning that you're able to stay for the panel. So I hope to continue to see there, and I think we should definitely continue the discussion in one way or another. So thank you so much.